in the name of personal injury law.
I'm here with Steve Sinas of the Sinas Dramus Law Firm in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking today about how life's not fair, and one of your clients was dealt that in spades. Can you tell us about Becky Price's case?
I can. So here's what happened in this case. Becky Price had a house out in DeWitt, and for a number of years she heated that house with fuel oil. And so there was a flange coming out from her basement where the fuel oil company would come and would fill up her tank that was in the basement. So they'd come and attach the hose and fill it up, and that was on every 6 months they would do that. And she called the oil company at the time. It was Mooney Oil Company, and it was about 2016. And she said, I no longer have the tank. I've now changed how I'm heating my home. I don't need your services. And they said, okay. And then Mooney was sold to another company called High Point Oil Company. And High Point took the old customer service list and assumed that people like Becky Price who were on that list still needed their services. And so one day in November of 2017, Becky's at work and she gets a call that 400 gallons of fuel oil were just shot into her basement through this flange that still was on the side of her house, but there was no tank anymore. So the guy apparently got to the house, thought she was a customer, attached it, and then didn't pay any attention to what was going on, and 400 gallons shot into the basement, into a drain in her storage room, which then went underneath the foundation of her house. And her house immediately became a hazardous site. She had to move out. She was called home. She had to get home, move out wearing a gas mask. She had lived in this house for 30 years. She raised her family in it. It was the place she was going to retire. It was home. It was home. And so, you know, that's what happened. She had to then move out of the house. Then the house had to be completely destroyed, excavated. She spent 2.5 years in temporary housing. Eventually, a new house was built on the other part of her property. The insurance company involved for the oil company paid for the new house. But then the question was, is she entitled to anything else than just replacing her house? And that was the issue.
So did she have to sue the insurance company to get them to replace her house, or was the lawsuit about something else?
Well, the insurance company is acting on behalf of High Point, and they were the defendant. And so once we got involved, High Point got their insurance company involved, and the house was resolved for the most part. There are some issues we had to work out. But this one issue the issue in the case, was whether Becky could claim any additional compensation for all the distress and anguish that she went through having to be thrown out of her home suddenly.
And did that case go to a jury in Clinton County?
Well, our experience was we took the case in. We said, of course she can make a claim for these damages. Of course she could ask a jury. But Michigan law wasn't as clear as you thought. I scoured every case I could to see if there was an actual case that said that she definitely has this right. There were cases that seemed to indicate that she had the right. I looked in cases from other states, but I realized there wasn't a real clear answer. So the Clinton County Circuit Court made a ruling that she could ask a jury for this money. The jury could give her whatever amount of money they thought was fair. And the trial happened, and they awarded $100,000. And at that point, the oil company pursued an appeal to take away the verdict on the grounds that nobody, no matter what the circumstances are, who's thrown out of their home as a result of someone else's negligence, if they haven't suffered physical injury to themselves, that they're just forced out of their home, nobody has the right to pursue mental anguish damages for that experience.
So then you're in the Court of Appeals, once again fighting the insurance company representing High Point. Something significant happened in the Court of Appeals. Can you tell us what happened?
It was a 14-page opinion. The Court of Appeals ruled in our favor, and I want to read from a passage from the opinion that really encapsulates the reasoning. The court said, authors and poets alike wax philosophical about the unique value of a home, which often provides as much, if not, in the way of feelings of emotion and memories as it does shelter. A home's unique and particular value has been acknowledged by our Supreme Court, and damage to or destruction of one's home or land would in most cases produce emotional suffering. Additionally, such a loss causes the stress and upheaval of displacement and the need to seek alternative shelter, which does not result from the loss or destruction of personal property. So the court goes on to recognize that this is what is really going on here, that her whole life has been upended by this, and they allow her verdict to stand.
So this is the published opinion from the Court of Appeals, which in and of itself is a significant and development. And then the oil company goes to the Supreme Court, and something really interesting happens because this case, I think, got a lot of press nationwide in the energy industry.
That's
but
right.
That did not go very well. So tell us what happened with that.
So the Court of Appeals comes out with their opinion, and the energy industry across the nation recognizes what happened here in Michigan in this case. And there are newspapers from San Antonio to Connecticut to out west reporting on what the Michigan Court of Appeals did in Becky Price's case. It was really astounding. And so we go to the Supreme Court thinking that the Court of Appeals gave them all the reasoning they need to say this verdict that was decided by a jury should stand. And I argued the case at the Supreme Court, and unfortunately the court, for reasons that still befuddle me, just said, no, we're not going to give anybody in Michigan this right. And so Price versus High Point is now black letter law here in Michigan for the proposition that if a company pollutes your property, forces you out of your house, and your life is upended just like Becky Price's, you have no right to any additional compensation beyond just replacing your house. You can't ask the bad actor who did that to you and your family for any additional compensation. Price versus High Point is the law of the land here in Michigan. I don't think many people realize it. I actually heard from people who were victims of the Kalamazoo oil spill saying that in their litigation, the result in Price versus High Point was a big development because that allowed the oil company there to say, hey, those who have lost use of your house, lost your house, we don't owe you anything other than the value of your house.
Wow. So it really seemed that for Becky Price, life was not fair because she had a jury verdict taken away from her.
Think about how unfair this is for
Right.
Becky. The experience itself shouldn't have happened.
Have the house taken away from her.
Right, she gets the house taken care of.
All of her stuff was
Yes,
probably
yes,
destroyed as
yes.
well.
Her whole life for a few years completely upended. And then she goes to trial court. She has to fight and fight and fight to make it through there. Then she fights the Court of Appeals, and then she gets the explanation that I think makes sense to everybody. And then she has to fight her way to the Supreme Court. And at that point, all these other interest groups come in to take out her verdict and
that don't know anything about her, and
Yeah.
don't know anything about the oil company involved,
and
right?
so the result is that the law gave her nothing other than what she had and no additional compensation for her experience. And on top of it all, she knows that her case is the one that is the law of the land here in Michigan for that. So, I'm a proponent of our legal system. I think it does produce fair results in many cases, but there are times where it's jaw-droppingly unfair, and I feel like this case is one of those.
Do we know if any other states have now followed the Price v. High Point case?
Surprisingly, people would think that you would be able to make this claim, but actually most states don't follow a similar rule. So it's really something that's surprising about American law here.
Wow. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that.
In the Name of Personal Injury Law is brought to you by the Sinas Law Firm.